It's Monday the 28th of September, the only show that can talk about number 10 without any mention of pig's heads and scandal, because our number 10 is back in the goals and we're back for another e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Tottenham, no one can stop them. We're gonna do it like we did last year. Tottenham, no one can stop them. We're gonna do it like we did last year.
Welcome to the podcast, guys. Welcome to e-Spurs, back after our self-imposed one-week ban for crimes against podcasting. We record the show each and every week throughout the season, now on a Monday night, so stick that in your diary if you like what you hear. Of course, as we always say, there's multiple ways to get in touch and stay in touch with all things e-Spurs. You can follow us on the Twitter at e_Spurs. Over 8,000 others already do so. On Facebook, e-Spurs page. And new for this season, you can now follow us on Google Plus and YouTube. All of the podcasts all go up on YouTube. So if you're not connected to Apple and you haven't got iTunes, YouTube's the place for you. The links for those, as I always say, are quite lengthy. You can find out how to get in touch with us on our website, espurs.blogspot.co.uk, and all the info is there for you, as well as some really good articles that go up through the week, match previews and reviews. Tonight we'll be looking back at the absolute slaying of the filthy rich, multi-talented league leaders at the Lane on Saturday, waving Senor Baldini off into the sunset with an invoice for 100 million. I'll be asking our panel, is Harry Kane better suited as a number 9 or 10? And if that wasn't enough, we'll also try and cram in a preview for next weekend's trip to the Liberty Stadium. Before we start talking all things Spurs, it's once again time for you guys out there to do some work and get in touch with us. Get those thinking caps on. You know the deal by now, guys. You're about to hear a clip of a former Spur with just one problem. We've disguised his voice. So see if you can work out who the voice is. I'll tell you how you can get involved. Here's the clip.
I get asked this a lot. Cascarino would love me to say him, but I have two that are world-class players. Jurgen Klinsmann, playing at Tottenham, was unbelievable, and Alan Shearer for England was just as good, but in a different way. So they're both at the top of my list.
So that's the Mystery Spur for this week. All you have to do is get in touch with us with your answer via our Twitter or Facebook pages if you think you know who that was just speaking a moment ago. If you're contacting us on Twitter, add the hashtag eSpursVoice after your answer, and we'll read the correct entries out on next week's show. So that's the warm-up done. Let's introduce our crew for tonight for the e-Spurs podcast. First up, a gentleman who's been on the show for a couple of weeks now. It's John Mannings. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. Still buzzing.
Yeah, we just mentioning there off air. Not a bad game, was it, John? Bit of a turn up for the books, eh?
Well, yeah. I mean, it just shows. I know we'll probably talk about it a bit more later, but absolute vindication for Pochettino and what he decided to do Wednesday to Sunday. Absolutely,
mate. You know, it's it's fair to say, I think there was a bit of criticism aimed his way after Wednesday, not least from myself. And the boy came good on the Saturday. You got to, you know, if you're going to criticise him like I did, you got to give him praise as well. So well done, that man, and to the team, and to the boys that took to the field.
Definitely, yeah.
Of course, we'll come on to that in just a moment. Joining John and myself on the podcast this week, another gentleman who was on a couple of weeks ago now, and when he was on that time, he was over in Thailand, and we mentioned that he's got a Spurs shop set up over there. He's back in the UK this week for the show. It's Jason. How you doing, buddy?
Very well, thanks, mate. Good to speak again.
Yeah, good to have you on, Jason. As I say, you're back over in the UK at the moment, mate. I know during the weekend, looking at the social media there, the Spurs Thailand group had a weekend of goings on with Gary Stevens over there.
Yeah, they have a couple of big meetings each season where people from around the country all fly in for it. And one lad made a 14-hour train journey just to come and watch the game with the rest of the group. So that's good. And Gary's out here as he's been managing a couple of the Thai sides in the Premier League. So it was good to have a trophy-winning Spurs player along.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see the fans all getting involved over there. Always,
yeah, good fun.
Always
good
sound, you know, the dedication of Spurs fans never ceases to amaze. You know, getting up at silly o'clock in the morning, you know, it's unbelievable. And also on the podcast tonight, guys, I'm pleased to say we've got another debutant on the show this week. I've been speaking to this guy on Twitter over the past few days, and I'm pleased to say we're joined on the podcast tonight by Ricky Sachs. How you doing, buddy?
Hello there, Andy. Many thanks for being here.
No problem at all. Good to have you on, mate. Regarding social media, Ricky, I know we've spoken about this also on the podcast over the last few years. What do you make of it in terms of the Spurs support on social media?
I think Twitter it can be at times a great platform. Other times it can't. It would be best to avoid. It really is dependent on how the team is going. You know, after a win against Man City, you know, everyone's up and vibrant. Fair to say a few days back after the Arsenal result, well, I don't think you need me telling you it was quite negative on there. So it very much is dependent on the result on the day to the impact it has on social media. But I think generally in terms of the fan base, I think we've got to try and get behind this manager. And I think the result against Man City shows for sure we're moving in the right direction. And again, the performance, I think, merits that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And moving on to, of course, our first subject of the night, that game that took place on Saturday. Coming to John, first of all, I'm sure you, like me, didn't see that one coming. First of all, what did you make of the performance as a whole on Saturday?
Well, what can you say? I mean, it was by far the best performance of this season, probably the best since we turned Arsenal over at home in the league last season. And to be fair, I'm not necessarily on Saturday against Man City, but I do think that it was coming. Because we'd had a few narrow victories, I really do think that I thought we was building up to something like this, and I'm just glad it came out against a top team, and it was just an amazing performance. Everyone was amazing. Just couldn't have asked for it to have gone any better, really.
Yeah, it certainly was. Against Man City, you know, we again spoke about this off air. Once Man City scored, you did fear the worst. Although we weren't playing poorly by any stretch of the imagination at the time, you sort of thought, here we go. But Jason, they didn't let their heads drop, did they? And they kept going. And in the end, although there's comments been made about offside goals and all of that, you know, we thoroughly deserved the win.
Yeah, we did. We just stuck in those first 35 minutes when Hugo kept us in it with a couple of big saves. But you're right, we weren't playing too badly, and you felt like we were having just as much of the ball as they did. But they just had that threat to them. You thought each time they come forward, they looked like they were going to get a clear-cut chance, and we weren't. But I think once Yaya went off, you know, that changed it a little bit as well. They were 1-0 up by then, but from that moment on, we were by far the better side, and we, you know, 4-1 could have been even more so at the end. Come to think of it.
Yeah, of course we had that offside. You know, the goal ruled out for offside. The Son finished there, so as you say, could have been more. Ricky, John mentioned a little while ago that he actually could see this performance coming. Was it as much a surprise to you, or did you think that this performance was one in the making?
Yeah, I've got to be honest with you, Andy. I was quite worried after that Arsenal game. I appreciate it wasn't the same players that took to the field. But the question you're going to ask of these players is how are they going to react in terms of character. 1-0 down against Man City. Let's be honest, I think they've only lost one game in 7. Title favourites, you know, I understand they didn't have their full squad out in terms of the quality out there, but there was enough on that field for Man City to win the game. And I just felt, even though we went 1-0 down, you could just see that we were creating chances. And you just saw if we could get a few opportunities, you know, we would definitely get goals. And I think once we got the first one, got right back into it at 1-1, there was no doubt in my mind they were there for the taking. And I think it showed tremendous character from the players because, let's be honest, we went into that Man City game, I think after the Arsenal game, a little bit negative in terms of how we all felt. We felt a little bit let down by the manager in terms of the selection. But I think, like Jason has said, he was vindicated in terms of that because we managed to get a win. And not only that, a very comprehensive win.
Yes, I certainly was. I mean, you know, 4-1, as we said, could have been more. John, there was a guy out there playing on Saturday that I haven't seen play before. Apparently, you know, we've got a new signing there by the name of Lamela.
Yeah, I didn't recognise him either. No, you got to give him credit. You know, in my notes here, I've written that since the increased competition for places, he's probably been the one in the squad who's upped his game the most. I don't just mean on Saturday, but for the last few. And where you've had players like Chadley, who definitely would have started every game he'd have been fit before, he's not, on the other hand, really risen to it, and so has lost his place in the team. But Lamela's been absolutely amazing. He's just, you know, from almost going on the deadline day and no one really would have cared, he's all of a sudden become a majorly important part of the team again.
Yeah, he certainly has. What is it, Jason, do you think about Lamela that's so different from now to, say, last season?
Well, the work ethic is there, but in fairness, I mean, he certainly wasn't shy of work last year. I think maybe the goal against Qarabag just lifted him a little bit, which was straight after a good assist at Sunderland. And then he put in a really good performance, didn't he, against Crystal Palace when some people had him down as man of the match. I think there's still times when he gets caught on the ball a little bit as if he's not quite sure what to do with it. But you can certainly see there is talent inside him. And we're starting to get it more rather than just one glimpse a game. We're getting a lot more glimpses. And I think, he kept his cool for the goal himself, didn't he? And I think we were probably all screaming at him, hit it, hit it, hit it. But it's as if he was in total control and he just kept his composure and just kept his cool and then stuck it away.
Jason, what do you think, sticking with Lamela, what do you think is his strongest position?
I think it probably depends on which types of teams you're playing against as well. I mean, there's times when he cuts in from the right-hand side, he looks better. I think he probably would. I think he's like a lot of our players. He's probably his natural position will end up being as a number 10. But then you've got Eriksen that wants to play 10. You've got Chadley that probably suits playing as a 10. You've got Dembele, people want to play as a number 10. Son could almost play as a number 10. There's the argument, does Harry Kane play better as a number 10? So I think, as long as there's that little bit of flexibility in movement, there's times when you can play out wide. There's times when you switch one of the wide players and he goes through the middle.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a nice problem to have, isn't it? When you've got those options there. And of course, just behind him, Ricky, you've got another two young lads in there by the name of Dele Alli and Eric Dyer, who have absolutely cleaned the floor with the opponents on Saturday. But also this season, they've put in performance after performance, which is, beyond their years, if you like.
Yep, totally agree with you, Andy. I have to say, just Eric Dyer. Now, we wouldn't have found this gem of a position if it wasn't for Pochettino recognising it in the pre-season, and furthermore, us giving him the opportunity to play in that defensive midfield role. Now, some would have said we should have gone out and bought Wanyama. Some should have said should have gone out and spent the money on Schneiderlin the year before. But let me just tell you, the fact that we haven't done that may yet be the making of this kid. I do think us giving him this opportunity to play in this role will make him flourish, not just for club, but for country as well. I think Roy Hodgson will look at this kid and see, he's not just here for the short term. I really believe that this kid can go very, very far. And the great thing about it is he's still young. He ran Toure off the pitch, literally. He went off before half time. So this kid, listen, there's a lot to come from him. We don't want to big him up too much, but everything he's doing at the moment is right. And just to touch on your point on Lamela, I have to say he's a kid transformed to what I've seen previously. He's working for the team. That's the one thing I think we could also echo the boys' thoughts in terms of, we've seen glimpses, but what we haven't seen is that work rate on a regular basis. And there just seems to be a bit more of a glint of his eye in his eye now that he knows he's on his last chance saloon with Spurs. And I don't think he's going to get the chance to play for a bigger club than Spurs in terms of, I'm talking from an English perspective, he can maybe go back to Italy, but Spurs is a real good club for him to find his way at. And, we've proven to be a club that is a springboard to further success. So, for me, this is a very key season for Lamela, and he started off very, very well. But as we all know, he's going to be judged performance by performance. But at the moment, he's doing his job, and he needs to keep doing that. And for sure, if he stays like he is, he will be in that first team, 100%. Yeah,
absolutely. And as you say there, quite rightly, I don't think last season, if he'd left at the end of the season, there would have been too many shedding a tear. But he stayed and he's knuckled down, isn't he? And I certainly last season was very critical of Lamela. I thought, he was wasting our time absolutely by keeping him in there. I thought, he's had his chances. He's not going to do it. But credit to you. Once again, you've got to give credit to him and the management there for sticking with it. And he's certainly repaying it. And I think he owes the fans, doesn't he? I think because the Spurs fans are very loyal. We saw that with Soldado. They stick with these players. The majority of the Spurs fans anyway. And I think he owes them that. John, are we looking at, do you think, a future England midfield pairing partnership in Dele Alli and Eric Dyer?
Well, firstly, I don't want to put too much pressure on either of them.
No pressure. Yeah.
I mean, you never know. There is a gaping hole in the middle of England's midfield, if you ask me. Now, Gerrard and Lampard especially are not there. The players that you'd have thought would play if fit, players like Wilshere, Henderson, obviously they've been out recently, which is quite good, actually. I'm enjoying that. But, with Dyer and Ali, I mean, you never know. They both definitely got the potential, and I do think they will end up being international players before very long. I wouldn't be surprised now England have qualified. There's no risk in playing kids like that, or giving chances to players like that for the rest of the qualification period for the Euros.
And of course, Dyer wears the black boots, which, in my mind is good enough reason to stick him in anyway.
I love that. I've gone and got myself some new football boots this week, and I bought black football boots in homage to Eric Dyer.
Listen, I was tempted to drag a pair of the old Gola out of the wardrobe in honour of Eric Dyer, but no, absolutely fantastic. And I just wonder, Jason, do you think we might be seeing, not necessarily in terms comparing them exactly in terms of quality, but do you think we might be seeing a similarity to maybe, if you like, Ledley King, whereas he moved into central midfield, didn't he? Played it half a season in central midfield, and then eventually went back to a centre-back role. Do you think we might see the same or similar with Eric Dyer?
It might be. It might well be similar. I think Ledley was a different class to most of the people, though, wasn't he? I mean, he was incredibly comfortable with the ball more so than anyone. I still think there's still times when Eric, at the moment, still looks to me a central defender in midfield, although, nobody could argue with his performances. And he took his goal really well Sunday. He didn't do the normal centre-half lashing, but there's still times he probably will, as he plays the role more, he'll release the ball quicker and pass it a little bit better, whereas Ledley was just, you felt Ledley could take people on and go past them and that as well. And Ledley had express pace at all times, didn't he? So slightly different, but very encouraging with Eric Dyer for sure. Although I probably would still sooner see him at centre half in the long run.
Yeah, I think there's a place for him there, isn't there? When you look at the likes of, we won't even mention Fazio's performance the previous Wednesday, but we'll gloss over that one. But there's certainly a gap for him there, if he wants to fill that position, isn't there? You think he's got the quality to do so. Ricky, just regarding the one thing I wanted to mention was the left-back situation. A few people have mentioned this on social media. It seems now as if Pochettino's preferring Davies over Danny Rose. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think the thing you got to ask yourself is, Andy, what has Ben Davies done in order to get himself dropped? And the answer really is not much. I think he's played exceptionally well when he's been a left back. There's no doubt Danny Rose last season was superb for us at left back, and it just so happens, this is football. An injury to Rose pre-season or beginning of the season, and Davies has got his chance. And to be fair, you have to say Davies hasn't done too much wrong. I thought he played very well against Manchester City. I think he's played well when he's been called upon, and therefore I don't feel you can just drop a player and bring someone else in just because they were there last season. I think Davies is there on merit, and until such time that if he falls out of form, Rose will be put back in. Needless to say, though, Rose's performance against Arsenal I thought was magnificent. I thought he played ever so well, but Davies has been playing well as well, so it's a nice problem for the manager to have.
Yeah, once again, another nice problem. And of course, on the other side, there's Yedlin performing well for Sunderland, I should say. So, nice problems all over the place at the moment.
I've just got a feeling that the reason Davies is playing, regardless of how good Danny Rose is, I think we all love him, but I just think it makes Vertonghen play that little bit better, because I just felt like, looking at the team last season, you felt he was babysitting Fazio constantly, and he was slightly exposed sometimes on to his left because Danny does like to bomb on. Whereas with Davies there and now Alderweireld the other side of Vertonghen, it just makes us look more solid. And I personally think that's the reason why Davies is playing more. Just because, you saw Vertonghen bring the ball out of defence a couple of times on Saturday, and maybe he probably wouldn't have been able to do that as Rose had been playing, because he probably would have already been 20 yards in front of him. So he knows he's not leaving any gaps, because Davies will tuck in behind him, Dyer can drop back, and I personally think that's why. Davies just makes the back four work better, in my opinion, defensively.
Yeah, it's a great shout, mate. Just regarding the centre two there, best centre-back pairing in the league at the moment?
Well, statistically, you've got to say, yeah, I think we've got the best record, or joint best record defensively. So yeah, 100%. I think.
Hang on a minute. This is the e-Spurs podcast. This is far too positive for a podcast. I can't be having this.
What's going on here, Andy?
Well, I did have the ump with Son that he touched in Chadley's header, so we'll come on about that.
And I've also tried to stay off of the subject of Wednesday night, but while we're here, lads, we're going to very quickly gloss over most of it. Jason, regarding the team selection, I know it's something that we've spoken about on social media after the game. How do you explain the team selection that the manager made on the Wednesday night against the Woolwich?
I can't explain it. And Saturday, to me, it doesn't vindicate. As good as the performance was Saturday, I just think you can't throw away a North London derby. I accept you can lose them. If you you pick your strongest team and the other side do you, then you take that one on the chin. But for me, I'm maybe old school. I just think, particularly when it's a North London derby, you pick your best side. And supporters, for me, the Manchester City game, we're all on a positive, we're all high. But 2 or 3 weeks time, we've almost moved on to that. We've moved on to Swansea. We've moved on to the Liverpool game 2 weeks after that. Whereas a North London derby, you win that, it stays with you for a long time, doesn't it? You don't forget it. You show the goals for years to come when you've done it. So, for me, inexcusable side, inexcusable.
Yeah, it's. I absolutely agree with you, and as I say, we've spoken about this one. For me, I think he was let down badly, especially by Fazio. I thought we saw one of the worst performances we've seen from any Spurs player in the last few years from Fazio, which is saying something. And
I think if you're going to squad rotate, fine. To say we'll leave Davis out to Danny Rose, you're still picking somebody that you think of as a first team player.
Yeah.
But if Fazio was not good enough to play against Qarabag, and he wasn't good enough and we were trying to sell him to West Brom, what the hell is he doing in a North London derby?
Yeah.
Play him against, I don't know, Norwich City at home or something, but not a North London derby for me.
Just your point there on Fazio. Now, I'm looking at it from the other perspective. Now, looking at it from the player's perspective, Fazio's perspective. This was a player, let's make no doubt about it, that we tried our utmost to get rid of in the summer. Okay? He's not played a minute of the Premier League. He's not played a minute of the Europa League. And then he's being asked by his manager to be put into he's been thrown into a North London derby, intense atmosphere, intense rivalry, pretty much a full house at White Hart Lane. I personally think we have to look at the manager, and I love Pochettino, but I think we have to look at the manager here for putting the player in and then expecting him to turn in a performance when he knows full well that he's the last choice centre-back at the club. Now, you're asking a player to go out and perform to his highest capability, knowing that he probably won't get back into the Premier League starting 11, nor the Europa League 11, and he knows probably most likely he'll be out of the door in January. So I personally have a bit of understanding from the players' behalf. I was as frustrated as any Spurs fan to see the lineup put out by Pochettino, but we're asking players that are backup players to come in and do a job when they know ultimately some of them may not even be anywhere near the first team. And that's my argument against it. I was disappointed by the lineup, but I can't say I was surprised. But I do feel for Fazio as a player because this guy, he won the Europa League a couple of years ago. Everyone seems to conveniently forget that. He was a European defender. We weren't the only club interested in him at the time. So there was clear interest in him. I just feel he's been slightly scapegoated in this.
John, you're very supportive, obviously, of Pochettino and what he's doing at the club at the moment. Very optimistic, which is fantastic. It does seem from Wednesday night that there's still some naivety there in his team selection, doesn't there?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, let's also remember he's only been a manager for 4 or 5 seasons or whatever it is. So, I mean, as much as, I agree with what Ricky and Jason have said. I can see it from both sides. But, yeah, I mean, maybe I don't think he'll be doing it again soon. Let's put it that way, Pochettino. I think it was... but he is trying to manage the squad. And it's not... in my opinion, it's a lot better than it was last season, but it's probably not as deep. I think maybe he's just trying to be fair and give everyone game time. I mean, I didn't want him to drop the entire back four and the keeper for the Arsenal game, but he did. And to be fair, we still could have won. We still had, enough of the game to have won it. And if we had done, we wouldn't have been talking like this. And we would have been saying, it's a masterstroke. He's rotated the squad. We've won 2 games. Whereas before, when he'd done it last time against Fiorentina because of the cup final, we ended up losing them both. The season was pretty much finished. But this time, being so early in the season and because we've been on such a good run in the league, I think it's the longest unbeaten run in the league now out of any club. I sort of, it's done, isn't it? Let's just move on now. We've got Monaco and Swansea coming up. And they're the most important games now. Let's not look back no more.
Yeah, well said. We had to, obviously, in the interest of balance, we had to mention Wednesday night. But yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. I would like to say as well, just one thing about that. Nothing that happened on the pitch. Just wanting to publicly express how much I think Arsenal was such a huge scab of a football club. I'm not just talking about the fans, because what they done was actually pretty funny because they ripped off the boards, which then left up. This is my only club, Tottenham Hotspur, which I found really, how stupid are you?
Yeah.
But, yeah, what annoyed me the most is the club done a really great thing for the Arsenal fans that night, and they honoured the price that they were offering the tickets to the home supporters for, which is £25 for an adult.
Yeah.
Now, they've announced the prices today for our our game away, and they're 64 quid.
What a surprise, eh? What a surprise.
Oh, mate, I'm not going to swear, but I just...
Last season was a prime example, wasn't it? In the FA Cup game we played there, reduced allocation. I think we got a pittance in terms of the numbers of tickets that were given to us by Arsenal. And, I've got to say, I agree that the scenes at the end were, rubbish to see, weren't they? Just absolute rubbish.
I found it flattering that they were doing it. I just think, for years we were the downtrodden team that was nothing to them, and the Arsenal-Chelsea game is now the biggest London derby and the totally insignificant club. And now they come to win a Carling Cup or a Capital One Cup game, the competition they don't care about, against a team that they never used to care about, and they're so delighted with it, they have to celebrate in that style. And you think your attitude to Tottenham has really changed then.
Well,
I found it really flattering.
Considering they don't care, and it's quite interesting to read on social media afterwards, Arsenal fans mentioning, we weren't even bothered about the result. Well, if the scenes of your fans delirious after scoring the second goal is not caring, then listen, lads, we won't waste too much time talking about the Woolwich. We'll move on to happier.
Move on.
Yeah, happier. Well, listen, I was going to say a happier subject. Just reading down my running order there, I'm going to start talking about Baldini. So I'm not sure whether or not happier is the right word for this subject. But of course, during the course of the day today, being Monday, it was announced that Franco Baldini has left his post at White Hart Lane. Gone is the guy that brought in the likes of Michel Vorm, Yedlin, Fazio, Stambouli, Capoue, just to name a few. First of all, Ricky, on this one, Franco Baldini, is he a waster or a scapegoat, do you think?
Bit of both, if I'm being honest with you, Andy. I want to just firstly say this is a real positive thing that's come out of today. And I'll tell you why it's a positive thing. Because this shows for once in a very, very long time at Spurs, there is now clear transparency in terms of the direction we're going in terms of recruitment. Mitchell has been with us now, I think, about a year. Him and Pochettino worked together at Southampton. There now is full, clear transparency in terms of who's doing the transfers, who's coming in, who's coming out. And there seems to be, for once at Spurs in a long, long time, an actual plan in place. And I'm talking about in terms of recruitment from the youngsters through to people like Alderweireld, who was actually courted by Mitchell. And I think he was one of the key reasons why Spurs managed to get him and steal him away from the clutches of Southampton. But back to your point on Baldini, I think what's interesting with this whole thing is that no one seemed to be criticising Baldini when the Magnificent Seven were coming in. Everyone was lauding him as some kind of genius that, we've got these players. But suddenly it became very apparent to me that when you look at it, these 7 players we brought in, we seem to be in a one-horse race for all of them. No one seemed around us to be bidding for these players. And what's more to the point is I firmly believe that AVB at some point during each player's selection from Baldini, he would have had to agree to each player coming in. Now, he may not fully have been behind the player coming in, but he would have given an input and would have said, I accept him, maybe as an alternative to the player that AVB wanted. But I think what needs to be clear is that Baldini brought these players into Spurs, and the players when they came in at the time were a very, very high reputation. The one core ingredient missing was a lack of Premier League experience. But I firmly believe that each player was ratified by AVB. Unfortunately, as we say, didn't work out too well. And what I will say is his final task was getting rid of the players that he brought in, which pretty much sums up his tenure at Spurs.
Well, yeah, it seemed as if that was his goodbye present to Spurs, isn't it, before Levy let him go. Jason, I mean, I've mentioned there's some of the buys that he supervised. It's difficult to know, isn't it, whether or not he was the guy who just saw the deal through, or whether or not he actually spotted the talent at the time, because there was this sort of grey area over transfers during his time at the club. Would you agree with those that say out there that Levy has found another scapegoat for a wasted summer of transfers?
Yeah, I think you always have to look at Daniel Levy's role in the transfer dealings. I mean, much of the criticism of spending the Bale money with Baldini is Daniel Levy, who is the one that agrees to sell Gareth Bale in the first place. And then Daniel Levy knows full well if the club just pocket 85 million quid and don't spend any of it, then the supporters will be singing, well, we want Levy out, won't they? So, he puts pressure on Baldini. Look, you've got to go and find me 4 players to bring in. I've sold Aldo, and that came a little bit earlier in that window, but they probably came in knowing that the Bale money was going to be banked. But then people like Lamela come and, we pay 30 million. But because you always do the Daniel Levy leaves it till transfer day, maybe if we'd have genuinely tried to sign Eric Lamela, 2 months earlier, he would have cost a lot less than the 30 million. So I think Baldini does get made a scapegoat to a degree. And as John has just said, I think a lot of the players that when they came in, we were delighted to sign Soldado, weren't we? We thought this is the top class striker we really wanted. And, you still look down and you think Christian Eriksen, we got him for 11 million. So as much as a terrible fee that 26 million looks for Soldado, although obviously it wasn't all paid up front, but, then you throw that the other way and you think, well, if we got Eriksen for 11 and we got Chadley for 7 million, suddenly, you'd sell those two for a lot more. So I think it's only come the end of all those players' time can you really judge it. Damian Kamoli was criticised heavily, wasn't he, when we bought players like Modric in? Oh, look at the state that Modric was that first season, and Ikoto doesn't look a left back. But in time, Luka Modric now is one of the worst players we've ever sold, because you think, God, what a player we let go. Benny Ikoto actually turned out to be a half decent left back. So, and with any director of football or manager, you'll get as many good signings as bad signings. Ferguson, Jemba, Bebe, people like that came in. Anderson, so for every Van Nistelrooy, there was a Jemba. Like any club, you'll get pluses and minuses.
Yeah, it's a great point you make. It does happen, doesn't it? And when you think back to, some of the signings that he made, Eriksen obviously sticks out as one of the successes there. John, in terms of directors of football, it seems as if we're now going down the road of having a chief scout in terms of the guy that's come from Southampton there. And it also seems, as Ricky said, that things are a bit clearer now in terms of the transfer policy. We seem to be going for these younger players who, credit to the guys that have come in, they're hitting the ground running, aren't they?
Yeah, they certainly are. And I also just think it shows that Levy, for once, is completely 100% backing his manager. I mean, if obviously Pochettino came in after Baldini, so probably didn't want him there. Same as like Stefan Freund, he was one of the first to leave Levy's role when Poch came in, because Levy's backing him. And I think if that's the case, then that's good. We've had it so many times where even back to when Hoddle was there and David Pleat, and that didn't really work. Then Arneson with Santini. Santini lasted 5 minutes. Then Yol came in and Arneson left. And I just hope now that if Paul Mitchell and Mauricio Pochettino is what Daniel Levy wants, I want him to back them now, and hopefully in 5 years' time, excuse me, Pochettino will still be there and will still be backing him
in a new stadium, of course.
Yes, certainly, yeah. Also, I just want to go back to what was said previously about Baldini. I think as far as the Lamela transfer is concerned, if you remember rightly, Roma signed. They got Gervinho, which allowed them to sell Lamela. So maybe if we couldn't have signed him 2 months earlier, because they wouldn't have sold him at that time. And I think, and then Ozil ended up at Arsenal, didn't he? Because Bale went to Real Madrid. And I think there's so many different things that can determine whether a transfer can happen or does happen or eventually will. I think maybe that's what it was in that case. And also, if you add up the money that we've got back for the players from that Bale money, if we eventually sell, well, we will, Chadley, Eriksen and Lamela, we could well make 100 million back on them, but the money will just come back not equal as to how it went out, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure. And it's one of those things, isn't it, that we'll never actually know the 100% exactly what goes on. And there's a little bit of speculation in there. Although I think the general feeling is that we're probably better off without Baldini, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, it cracked me up. I don't know whether any of you saw this earlier on, but when Spurs Official on Twitter put out the tweet saying that Franco Baldini had left, Roberto Soldado favorited the tweet.
I did see that. Yeah.
So that says it all, really, don't it?
Yeah, no hint of irony in there at all.
Yeah.
It's and again, once again, we spoke about, earlier on, Spurs fans sticking by players that, are struggling, and there's another example there for you. Whether or not it's the price tag, who knows? I mean, Lamela certainly seemed weighed down by the the price that we paid for him.
Definitely. If we paid 10 million for him, he wouldn't have got half the amount of stick that he has had in the last
Sure.
2 years.
Yeah, it's and again, but then as we also mentioned, if the club don't go out and spend that money, they're in that damned if they do, damned if they don't situation, aren't they? So it's a tricky one, and it's very easy to speculate.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've said on the pod before how the signings that we'd made in the last 2 years, none of them really hit the ground running. But I think especially this summer, I think all of them have. I really do. All right, Trippier has been a bit shaky, but he's not really started. I'm talking about Son, Toby, and Dele Alli. They've all just come into the team seamlessly and improved it immediately.
Yeah.
They've not, there's been no bedding in. They've all just hit the ground running and smashed it. We've been looking really good with those three in the team so far.
I'll tell you what, John, the one that I'm really excited about, we mentioned him just now, is Dele Alli. I think this guy's got everything to, going forward. I really can see him being another in that sort of Steven Gerrard mould. I really can, a guy who can score, who can, power pass players. I think once he bulks up a bit in a couple of years' time, I really think this guy's going to be special.
Yeah, definitely. I would most certainly agree with that. I mean, once you get out of your head the fact that he moves a little bit like Jermaine Genius, hopefully he doesn't end up being that sort of player. But yeah, no, he's got it all, hasn't he? The only thing is I do worry about is that when he inevitably does have a little bit of a dip, the fans especially just need to carry on supporting him, which I think they will, to be fair, because he has started off so well, and don't let him turn into another one of these players who just gets ruined by the fans so often. But I don't think that'll happen in his case, but let's hope not anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Just to finish off, Jason, Spurs better off post Baldini?
Yeah, I think we are, because there is now a little bit more consistency in what we're trying to buy. I think with any director of football, part of the problem with Baldini is that, the first summer he goes out, go and replace Bale with superstar players. That goes wrong. Then AVB wants to play a certain style of football based on keep the ball, boring football. That goes out the window. We have Sherwood coming in. We want to change to a 4-4-2 system with almost like headless chicken football. That goes out the window. It's another philosophy that comes in. Whereas where Swansea have, a director of football, they just tweak it as each manager comes in. But we totally rip up what the previous one's done and start again. And I don't think any director of football is helped. So I think you're right. Now we've got a clear direction with Mitchell and Pochettino working, and I think possibly a little bit more solidity in there. You think, right, now we'll buy players over the next 2 or 3 years that fit that certain type of system, and hopefully some of the mistakes of the past we won't make again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, just going back to that Man City game I don't know if you boys agree, but when that fourth goal went in, I actually left the chair, jumped up from the chair, and I haven't felt like that about Spurs in such a long time. I tell you, I haven't felt that type of, for want of a better word, that elation about.
Didn't Clinton NG do well for the goal as well? I mean, that was the first real proper glimpse of him doing something positive, and you just thought, wow, that was a wonderful bit of play.
Fantastic, absolutely. And you know what? It wasn't even about the fact, I don't think, that we've beaten Man City. I think it was just seeing the guys play like a team and looking hungry and looking ambitious and looking pacey and looking, all of those things. I think it could have been Brentford that we're playing, but it was more about the fact that they looked as if they were Spurs players, that flowing football, that the football almost that we saw a couple of years ago in the Champions League once again, with people bombing down the wings when NG come on, as you mentioned there, it was fantastic to see. And that, I think, I got my mojo back on Saturday to a certain degree, because it has been a hard watch, hasn't it? After the Chelsea and Arsenal games last season, those aside, it hasn't been great to watch, although there have been a few positives, the cup final in there. But on Saturday, I think they were back, and I think
it was more like watching Spurs that we want to see.
Absolutely.
Wasn't it? That's the thing. All the things we criticised the side for in that time. There's no pace in the team. This is wrong. Suddenly we started to see, right, this is what we want to see. So, no, much better.
Yeah, what I was going to say, chaps, is I just think for the first time, the question was going to be, after we played so well against Palace, could we follow it up with another positive attacking performance? And Pochettino, when he was renowned for Southampton, was an attacking philosophy. And I think the argument is that last season we saw it in glimpses against the Chelsea, Arsenal. But the question was really now, could we maintain that level of standard going into another Premier League game? And I think it's for the first time we've actually seen back-to-back Premier League performances at home, where we've dominated the opposition, played attacking football. Now at Spurs, there seems to be an underriding feeling now that we don't have players that fear playing for the shirt anymore. There seems to be a care now that when they go out there, they're going to, they will get the support if they try. And that's something that, I think previously in the past under AVB and Sherwood to some degree, we've moved the bad eggs on now. We haven't got the Adebayors there. We haven't got the Paulinhos there. Soldado, who tried very hard, we haven't got him there anymore. We've moved on the players that necessarily just didn't perform for us week in, week out. And we've now got players in the team that know that they'll get put in the team and they'll be trusted by the manager if they follow and adhere to his philosophy. And that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing a team here at the moment that play without fear. And, they want to go on to better things. And that's what Pochettino's brought to the squad. And I just thought it's a great time for us. We should enjoy this time. The results against Man City, look, no one beats them 4-1 every week. I think that was their biggest defeat since 2008 when they got turned over by Borough 8-1. So we shouldn't take it for granted that we got that result Saturday. But for me, I think like you just said there, Andy, it's a case of where slowly but surely things are slowly falling into place and we're quietly going about our business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And on that note, I told you we'd turn the subject into a positive at the end, and certainly looking optimistic after the Man City game. Now, lads, we're going to move on because time's running away with us very quickly. We every week, as you know, if you listen to the show, we asked our social media audience a question on the Facebook and on the Twitter. And this week, guys, we asked Harry Kane, is he a number 9 or number 10? Really in response to the debate which came up on Match of the Day at the weekend where Ruud Gullit said that he thought Kane was much more of a number 10. He liked to drop back deep. So it got me thinking, is Kane better as a number 9 or number 10? And I put this to the lads. They've been having a think, and let's get their thoughts on this one now. Let's first of all go to John. Kane, for you, number 9 or 10?
I personally don't think it matters too much, purely because of the kind of way that we play and the players that are in the team with him. In other words, what I'm saying is the three that play behind him are more than comfortable playing in any four of those positions. If you're taking forward, left, central attacking midfield and on the right or up front. I mean, when Kane wasn't up front, right at the point of that, Lamela was for the fourth goal and he managed to tuck it in. And, Son will score, Eriksen will always score. It's not really... the system just proves that we're not reliant on one player. And I've said on the pod previously that I think I probably would have kept Soldado and started this season with him as a 9 and Kane as a 10. But then again, that was before we signed NG and Son, so things have changed since then. But yeah, I personally don't think it matters. I mean, Harry's his performances haven't dropped, although he's not scored. He's still been in the game. He's still been in the right position when he's needed to be, although he's snatched at a few and not scored as many as he wanted. He has got 2 or 3, I think, offside goals already this season, and the 2 for England. So all this worry about droughts and stuff is nonsense, in my opinion. But yeah, I really don't think it matters too much. I think if another player does come in the future who is an out-and-out number 9, say we'd have signed Charlie Austin, for example, then if Kane and Austin would have been on the pitch at the same time, Kane would have been the 10 because Austin is an out-and-out striker. Whereas we was allegedly after Berahino, he would have been another one of them players who could fill any one of them 4 positions. And I think Kane can too. He's that good and he's that versatile. And so are the players that he shares that attacking part of the pitch with.
Yeah, Jason, I mean, do we need to, do you think, put Kane into a box, the number 9 or number 10? Or do you think, as John mentioned there, that he should be free to express himself and we mix and match it, so to speak?
I think John's right. It depends on the role of the other 3. That if Kane plays and decides, like, I need to leave the box, I need to go and pick it wide, you must have somebody that then fills the gap, like Lamela did for that 4th goal. I think that's the key to it. In so many of the games, we don't get that willingness of that midfield player or the wide players to really run into those goal-scoring positions. So then, when Kane does get it and you look to play the ball into the middle, then there's no one there. That's when the ball starts coming backwards and the whole pace slows down. So I think he's very comfortable playing in both roles, but there are times when you must fill in the number 9 when he vacates that position. And we do it sometimes, but not every time. And I think we probably do it better when we play the better sides. When you played Arsenal and the Chelsea game last year and City this week, the one big thing that you'll get in your favour is that those 3 teams will all come to Spurs to win the game. and they'll try and score goals. Whereas it's perhaps when you play your West Broms or some of those sides that will come here and play much deeper and pack that back line, that it's really important that other players then fill in the gap in the middle that they don't at the moment.
Yeah, it's a great point, and we've seen that so many times, haven't we, where teams come to White Hart Lane, they park the bus, if you like, and it's really hard to break down. So having that extra tool in our armoury is surely only a good thing, you would think.
I mean, you looked at that Sunderland game, and that was a prime example, wasn't it? We weren't getting players in the box. He looked isolated. Sunderland were quite happy to defend deep, and it was only right at the last minute where Mason makes the charge in the box where he could drop out and flick a ball round the corner, because you had the willingness for somebody to run into the box beyond him. We don't always have that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great shout you make. Just reading on the social media, guys, the responses we've got starting on the Twitter. Zulfali says he's a 9, so he can focus on being a goal-scoring machine instead of a playmaker that controls the whole team. Mason and Eriksson are more suited to the number 10, he says. Raf Salman says good passer, good vision, not really a poacher. He lacks pace. He says Spurs Diver says Harry Kane can play a 10 and 9 simultaneously. Wouldn't that be great? 2 Harry Kanes in the side. Yasin Makda says 10, he gets more involved and does the majority of his work outside the box. He needs someone ahead of him to provide to. So, Ricky, it seems from a few of the comments that we've got on the social media that people are seeing a Harry Kane that prefers playing slightly deeper.
I think, to echo the boys' comments, Andy, I think he can play anywhere on that forward front line. For me personally, he's a mixture of everything. He's a jack of all trades. I think he's got great game craft. I think he can bring other players into play. I think he's got great vision in terms of finding a pass as well. And I know many were worried, the media for the last 4 or 5 weeks, concerned that Kane hasn't scored yet. Look, let's be honest, we're Spurs fans. We watch him week in, week out. We was never too worried that he wasn't going to score because he was getting himself in these positions. And let's also remember, the chap didn't score a goal until November last year, and he's already off the mark, and we're in, end of September. So listen, we're not concerned. He's that good for me that he can play as a number 10 as well as a number 9. And I think like the boys picked up on, I think Berahino, that was the only concern that, missing out on him. I think that would have been a fabulous forward line for Spurs in terms of the link-up play between those two. But you probably would argue that if we signed Berahino, we may not necessarily have had Son on the radar at the time. So, we can always revisit that option in January. But for me personally, I think, Kane is good enough to play both positions. And for sure, there'll be more goals to come.
Yeah, great shout. And Son, what a player. We haven't really even had time to mention Son. What an impact he's made, in his first 2 or 3 games. And I'm sure he'll get a run out in the Europa on Thursday against Monaco. Listen, lads, we're going to, as I say, time has beaten us once again because so much to speak about on this week's show. Very quickly, let's get a preview. Let's get some predictions for Monaco on Thursday. Of course, Spurs away, second Europa League game. First game we beat Karabag. John, it's going to be tough, isn't it, Monaco? No walkover, but it's nice in many respects that we go into places like Monaco, and it's nice that in some respects that it's not going to be a walkover. It's going to be a real test for the lads.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably the reason why we've had this sort of European hangover, if you like, over the past few years, because we have been playing such inferior teams during the week, and because we're making so many changes to the team, you can't really get that kind of consistency in performance and form like the Champions League clubs do, who don't rotate and rest for their European games because they can't. And I think this is one of them, really more so than Karabag especially, where hopefully we won't make too many changes. We can continue the form that we've been in and go there and get a good result. And let's not forget that although you would probably class them as a Champions League quality club, their team is not what it has been in the past year or two. They've lost a few, and I fancy us to get a result there, definitely. Yeah,
Jason, looking forward to this one?
Yeah, apart from, actually I'll be in London, so it won't be a 2 o'clock kickoff out here. But yeah, I think, when the draw came out and we got Anderlecht and Monaco, it did feel a little bit more like a European group than having Tromso and some of the other sides we've played. So yeah, looking forward to it. No Berbatov is there anymore, which is a disappointment not to see Berber in there. But yeah, fingers crossed we can get a go there and get a good result.
Yeah, certainly will. It's a great stadium to play in as well. Sort of looking through the pictures on the internet. Ricky, Thursday night, Europa League's back. Let's get the first prediction on this one.
Well, I'm expecting, just to pick up on the point, Andy, I'm expecting to shuffle the pack ever so slightly. I think we might see Rose, Wimmer come into the back four. Wouldn't be surprised also to see Vaughan potentially start. I think this one, it's going to be a draw. I think it's going to be 1-1. I think we'll take a point. Monaco aren't a bad side, but I think like the chaps have picked up on, it's not the greatest Monaco team. And I think if we come out of there with a point away from home, that's not a bad result at all.
Yeah, John, a point, would that be a respectable result for you?
It would, but I'm going to be greedy, and I reckon we'll win. I do. And
I love
just
it.
because I think we need to, because we don't want to have to be going away to Karabag, 7,000-mile round trip 3 days before we play Chelsea, needing a result. So if we can gather enough points in the first 4 or 5 games that the last one doesn't matter, then hopefully that wouldn't impact our league form too much in that one. But yeah, I'm going to go, I think 2-1 Tottenham.
2-1 Tottenham. So we're going so far a draw and a win. Jason, are you sharing the optimism?
I think I am, if we get the team that I'd really want to see. If Hugo was in goal and we played more or less the City side with just the odd tweak, then I'd expect us to go there and think we could win. But I think this week we've learnt now not to second-guess team selections. You know, we got it wrong with Woolwich, and then Manchester City come with no heart, company and that. And, you know, we'd have probably had a different scoreline prediction from 4-1 if they'd have played. So, you know, we'll see what the team is first. But, yeah, 2-1 if it's the team I want. Otherwise, 1-1 if there's too many changes.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, mate, it would be so nice, wouldn't it, just to see Spurs get back in the trophies this year. I mean, obviously, League Cup's gone now, but it's been, 20-odd years since our last European trophy. It's about time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we haven't even really gone close, have we, in the years of the Europa League? We had the semi-finals with Seville, what was that now, 7-8 years ago?
Yep.
But other than that, you know, we're struggling even to go. Last year it was the first knockout round. The year before that it was the last 16 rounds. So yeah, I want us to have I want us to try and win a trophy. You know, I don't expect us to, but I would like us to really try and win a trophy.
Yeah, absolutely echo those views 100%. And let's hope once we get to those knockout stages, past the 252nd game of the tournament, you know, it starts to get serious then, doesn't it? And that's when it starts to get exciting. And
being out the League Cup should hopefully help as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, we had that all the way through till March the 1st last season as well, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was a great day out at Wembley last year, wasn't it? But maybe in some way there's a blessing in there. And let's see. Listen, lads, we have for this week run out of time. Really great show tonight. My thanks to Jason, to John, and to Ricky. Cheers, lads.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having us.
No worries.
No
Spurs.
Cool.
Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure, Andy.
No problem at all, Ricky. Just promise us you'll come back on in the future.
I will indeed, my friend. I will indeed.
Listen, lads, thoroughly enjoyed that tonight. As I say, my thanks to Jason, to John, and to Ricky. We'll be back next Monday after the Swansea game. We'll be looking back at Swansea, at Monaco, and whatever else happens Spurs-wise in the week. Have a great week, guys. Let's hope for a good 3 points against Monaco, another 3 points against Swansea. Maybe that's too much to be hoping, but this has been your optimistic e-Spurs podcast this week. All that leaves me to say is, come on, you Spurs.
Tottenham, no one can stop